Art of Jacob Emery. Written by Peter Devine. Read by Night Terrors. Ghost stories? No. We don't have anything like that around here. We do have the story of Jacob, but that's about as close as you'll get. You really want to know? Well, I'm not supposed to tell you, but alright. Just no interrupting. I don't have patience for it. How to describe Jacob Emery? Well, I guess you could say he was the kind of guy you could never take notice of. This isn't to say he was a bad kid. In any sense, many people in this town thought he was the most reliable person for an odd job in the state, but he never really excelled at anything. He was the living proof behind the statement, Jack of all trades, ace of none. Most of this was due to his own lack of will. He dabbled in damn near everything this town could offer him. Automobiles, radio operation, store management, what have you. But he never stuck with anything. His friends and co-workers went after him about it a number of times, but everybody got the same unsatisfying response. It just wasn't enough, needless to say. Any friends he kept were either very patient or never spoke of the matter altogether. It was probably inevitable, then, that Jacob would leave to go abroad. I don't remember where he went, but I think Gertrude down the street knew before she passed on. You'll have to scout someone else if you ever get curious. In any case, no one even tried to stop him. Everybody thought that little travel would stamp the ambition out of him, or else feed it until it was no longer an issue. Hell, we even gave him a sending off party, which I thought was pretty nice of everybody. So, anyway, he was gone for 6, 7 years? Can't remember. You'll have to check with someone else about that too. Anyways, he came back, eventually, and he had changed, obviously enough. He was amiable, energetic, all smiles all the time, and we all quickly learned why. He showed us a souvenir he brought back, a solid black stick, the length of a pencil, but the texture of chalk. We all wondered why on earth such a simple thing would prompt such a spring in his step, until he gave us his demonstration. He took a piece of paper, and with this stick, God, there's got to be a better word for it. With this stick, he drew a crude circle. It dropped and rested on the border of the paper, like a stone. It didn't leave the paper, but it acted out on it, sort of like an old movie projector on a screen. Son, I know how crazy that sounds, and if you feel like playing skeptic, then you can leave an old man to his craziness. But I know what I saw, even if everyone's been hushing it up. And that stone he drew dropped. Jake even passed around the paper, and it was being passed. It rolled around the paper the whole time. None of us had any words for it. Hell, what was there to say? But he continued drawing demonstrations after demonstrations for us. Stick figures in various pageants and plays, doing everything from fighting each other to making perfect human pyramids. And we all thought it was incredible. That was all the go-ahead he needed. He announced that he planned to put on shows to pay for rent and food, where he would draw anything the crowd members wanted. That we talked to some length about, and he eventually convinced us that it would be safe, his drawings ethical, the practice lucrative and unique, and the attention would not go anywhere outside of the town's borders. Poor Jacob. If I'd not been so swept up in the moment, I might have read the signs right then and there, and saved the sorry son of a bitch by snapping the terrible thing in half. But I was younger. We all were. And we saw no problem with encouraging him with what we all saw as an incredible experience to be shared with everyone else. Now, He didn't have any big radio or television connections, mind you, and the internet wouldn't come around for another decade. So he did what all people on the shoestring budget do. He advertised his show with flyers. Flyers might not mean anything to you city folk, but in a small town, they gain a fair glance over from time to time. And what's more, Jacobs managed to stick out by having little figures jump up and down and whatnot to get people's attention. His first show must have gotten nearly 60 or so people, probably a lot more than that. And his shows were fantastic. Someone would shout out a scene from a play or a comedy sketch, and Jake's hand would fly over that white wall like a bird. He'd been holding back when he made that stone. That's for damn sure. His illustrations were all spot on, and he could make an incredible human figure in minutes. Come to think of it, I don't remember any of his scenes lasting more than 10 minutes to make. They were really well done scenes. Not only could you see a knight charge a castle, Jake would draw the castle's interior as well, like a wedding cake split down the middle, so you could see the knight scale the wall, fight his way through levels to the dungeon, fight back out with the princess, and make a leap and jump off castle parapets onto the gateway horse, all in a complete silence. Not realistic, no, but that was part of the appeal. None of us went in there expecting something real. When a scene or a sketch was finished, either the characters would leave off a wall or he'd cover the wall with the white paint. This was good, in a way. It gave these shows a time limit, so that when he'd finished with all of the 4 walls in the room, everyone knew the show was over until the paint dried. Jake, meanwhile, was changing in a bad way. I'd mentioned that upon his return he'd been extremely energetic. Well, that energy, that vitality or fervor, or whatever you want to call it, never left him. Not for an instant. Far from it. It seemed to grow in him, and he enjoyed it all too much. His eyes grew wider. He slept gradually less over time, his statements and opinions more radical and frenzied, and though he never was a pushover, he was starting to make people nervous in his company. A month or two passed, and Jake's audience grew like wildfire. Nearly everyone in the town paid to see Jake's art in action, and he had to rent out larger and larger places for them to sit. He now didn't stop after one scene was done. He moved directly on to the next. Put it on the next blank space on the wall, sometimes the intriguing effect of causing scenes to mingle, which the crowd loved. The subject matter got more wild and immoral. The monsters got more bizarre and creative. The fighters using more impossible weaponry, all for the sake of the crowd's interest. Jake got steadily more indulgent, which we figured was from the money, and he became a drinker and a womanizer, neither of which got rid of the vitality by some way. Some of those women claimed that they'd wake up in the middle of the night to see him scribbling with that stick on a drawing pad, a gigantic grin on his face, and while most of them said they'd assumed he was drawing them in the nude, there are rumors that 1 or 2 of them got glances at that notepad. Those anonymous few supposedly said that those drawings absolutely were nudes, but neither of them, whoever they are, will say what he was drawing. Don't bother looking for the notepads or flyers. They're all gone now. I'm getting off track. Point is, he was hitting the bottle, and that's important, because it was that drinking that would eventually ruin everything. On the night of one of his performances, he was walking in front of his cheering crowd. It was immediately apparent to everyone that he was completely drunk. I was in the front row, and I could smell the bourbon on him from 10 feet away. The show started. He went through a bunch of sketches and scenarios the crowd recommended, when at the end, someone asked that he draw himself. Everyone cheered the idea. I guess they'd been wondering what his creations thought of him, and eventually obliged. No sooner had Jake finished connecting the final 2 lines on his coat than every single character across the vast expansive wall all stopped and looked directly at that illustration. Lovers stopped kissing. Clowns stopped laughing. Robots stopped fighting pirates. Everything stopped and looked at the Jacob illustration. The crowd died almost instantly. I remember Jake's face at that moment, pale white, full of terrible comprehension at his mistake, and looking desperately for the cans of white paint he'd forgotten to put out before the show. Everyone else? They were looking at that fake Jacob. That Jacob reached into his pocket, pulled out a black stick of his own, and as we all watched, drew a door. He pushed on his side, and the door swung open, allowing him to walk through onto the floor of the auditorium. The rest was an absolute hellish pandemonium. People screamed and ran for the exits as Jacob's characters, both those currently on the wall and those which had previously left before being covered up, ran out of their own exit, throwing pies, shooting lasers, blowing fire and poison and the impossible. I was near enough to exit to escape, and gave only one backwards glance. The scene will haunt me forever. Jacob Emery was being dragged by his creations, kicking and screaming through the door his copy had made. The auditorium burned down, obviously enough, but I have no idea how many characters escaped and what happened to the fake Jacob Emery, or how many people died. The fire brought the fire department from the nearest cities up to over 100 miles away. They in turn brought the police force, which brought the government, which hushed up everyone. They took the flyers and the art Jake had made and swore everyone to secrecy or else life detainment. The fire was blamed on a cigarette in the garbage during a basketball game, and we all eventually went on with our lives. Jacob was made to never have existed. In retrospect, I realized everything. Jacob hadn't been creating illustrations. Illustrations don't move, much less act or attack. They're just images people see, shadows made to look like real things. Jacob had been making life, actual thinking things in some alternate dimension, using a power that was never meant to fall into mortal hands. He got drunk on his power. His punishment was probably well deserved. Incidentally, the government screwed up on 2 different accounts. They did a damn good job silencing everyone, but proof remains. The ruins are still there. The auditorium's ruins. I hear they're going to start reconstruction soon, which will wipe out any remaining evidence someone can definitely see. But I went back there once, several years ago, after the fire just once. Amidst the rubble, covered in ash, I saw something squirming. I looked closer. It was Jacob Emery's hand on the wall, exactly like it had been 3 years ago. Sweaty, but calloused, I remember. But it was constantly flailing, as if the body it was supposed to be attached to was still writhing in flames. That was mistake number 1. Number 2 was those creations. Like I said, I don't know how many escaped, nor how many the government agents found and caught, but I will say this. Those tall grass meadows on the outskirts of town, don't go into them. Ever. You were asking about those white figures you've seen at night, right? This town doesn't have ghost stories. Game of the Shadow Man. Written by Robert D. Alsbury. Read by Night Terrors. The Game of the Shadow Man is one of the earliest forms of demonic summoning rituals known in urban legend, dating as far back as 1200 AD. The ritual has gone under many other titles, the most popular being the Boogeyman Ritual, Satan's Shadow, or simply the Dark Summoning. Many forms of the summoning ritual have come and passed, most resulted in more failures than results, while others simply passed into obscurity. This version, however, is one of the remaining few that yields results. This tutorial will act as your personal guide on how to perform the Game of the Shadow Man. Before enacting the ritual, it is best noted by past reports that the summoner, you, the reader in this case, must be first informed on what the Shadow Man is as to better understand what you're dealing with. The title Shadow Man is simply a description of what the being is, a tall, shadowy, humanoid figure. The true name of this creature is unknown, though through conversation with the being, it tends to give a variety of names it refers to itself as. The most prominent name it calls itself by is simply Shadow. The being is a tall, lanky figure appearing masculine in nature. A pale gray skin is also referred to as rotting while alive in appearance, and its hair is a thick black ebony. It is always described as wearing a gray or black cloak that covers up everything but its head and hands. However, its hair always covers its eyes as well, making it impossible to see if the figure even has eyes. Furthermore, the nose is described as abnormally sharp, and the mouth is wide and sharp-toothed smile with lips described as charred skin. The hands of the figure are tipped with a strange black ashy substance from the foremost bend in the finger to the tip, and is sharpened to a pointed end. Now that the being has been identified, the ritual process can begin. There are 3 steps to the process: the preparation, the execution, and the resolution. First, the preparation. Before the actual ritual can take place, certain forms of preparation must occur. First, acquire access to a decently sized room that, when closed off, will be completely dark. No light must be able to get into the room during the entirety of the ritual, else it will yield no results. Due to this, it is preferred to act during the darkness hours of the night for the best results. This is to give Shadow a place to access during the ritual. Second, grab a pencil and a piece of paper, not a mechanical pencil, but a genuine number 2 wooden pencil. Take them both and draw out your best self-portrait. It seems that realism and details do not matter to the execution, as even a simple stick figure yields the same results. After you finish the picture, no matter how good or bad it is, scratch out the eyes with the same pencil. Make it as thick and dark as possible. Make sure the eyes are completely blotted out and cannot be seen. This is to allow Shadow to have a form. As most claimers detail, it is a very similar form and appearance to themselves. Added with this, find any piece of clothing that you have worn for at least a month or so. This is to add another layer to the formation of Shadow, and sadly, you will be losing this article of clothing in the process. If something that comes in pairs, use both. Third and finally, acquire 12 identical candles. This will be both your portal and defense against Shadow, and further details about how this will be used are expanded on later. The following must also be attained and will be used during the execution process: a candle lighter, a sharp object, preferably a knife, a pair of gloves and socks to wear, black ink, printer or pen ink is fine, though a decent amount is needed. Now that you have obtained all necessary items, it is time to begin the ritual. Start by going into the selected room and measuring out a space wide enough to perform with. The best way to test is to stick your arms out to your side and spin in a circle. If you hit nothing or nothing gets in the way, you have enough room. It is okay before you begin to have light in the room to see what you are doing. Begin placing your candles in the circle space you measured out, each spread out equally, and once they have been set, light them all up. Now, close off any light to the room. Make the room entirely sectioned off to just itself with no outside connections. Go to your circle of candles and, using the ink, put out the fire on every other candle. For better reference, imagine the candles like a clock, and put out the ones placed at the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11 spots. This is the beginning of the ritualistic process, and as said in the reports, this is the portal for Shadow to enter through. If at any moment you wish to black out, simply light up one of the dead candles. However, whatever you do not have more candles out than on. These candles are your one safety net, and if you make a mistake, it will not end well. Continuing forward, make sure you have your gloves and socks both on as an added layer of protection. Even with the candle circle, it is very important you have a layer of clothing as well. Take the pre-selected article of clothing you wish to use, set it in the middle of the circle, taking heed not to distort or destroy the circle, and stain it with the remainder of your ink. Follow that. Take up your sharp object and cut a diagonal line from the top to the bottom. Once you have done that, slip in the drawing you had made from earlier into the clothing. If it is too small to fit inside, simply lay the drawing on top. Now burn it. Take the lighter and burn the drawing. You won't need your sharp object for any other reason afterwards, and as said before, your lighter can be used if you wish to back out any time during the ritual. However, if you back out, never attempt the ritual again. Now, the next stage is one that requires the most direct influence. While the picture is burning, stand back and begin to think of one particular thing. Hate. Think of things you despise, things you find horrid and disgusting, things you could harm or kill over. Focus on these thoughts, and all the while say the words, Shadow. It's not so much a chant, but you will need to repeat that word over and over again. Slowly, the room around you will shift. It will turn from black and white to crimson and magenta. The air will seem ashy and stale, hard to breathe properly. And from the center of your candle circle, a figure will begin to rise. That is Shadow. You will know when it has fully entered when the room suddenly goes quiet, even if it was already silent to begin with. It will, oddly, become even more so. Focus your attention now on Shadow. This is where the final stage comes into play. You have brought it into your realm to make a deal with it. So long as you are aware of everything you and it both say, you can converse as you please. There is no penalty in conversation, and you can talk for however long you would like. But the ultimate deciding factor is the deal it provides. You can ask Shadow for anything you desire, fame, fortune, even murder. You can be as simple or as descriptive as possible. However, you must be aware of what is said for both sides of the bet. Make sure anything you bet for and have to pay for is not a major harm to you. Following your request, Shadow will raise its hands to you to shake in confirmation of its deal. So long as you have your gloves, do not worry, and take its hand. Before you even realize it, Shadow will have disappeared. The ritual will have been completed, and while it may not come immediately, your reward will eventually be provided. But there is one more thing you must take care of. The gloves, immediately strip them off and throw them into the circle. Set fire to them. Light all the candles on fire. Do anything you can to discard of your evidence. Shadow knows of what you've done, but so long as you have destroyed the evidence, it cannot track you. From this point, you will have successfully won the game of the Shadow Man. You are free to live your life as you please without fear of consequence. What you wish for will come true to you, naturally. If it was money, you will get bonuses and raises at your job unexpectedly. If it was fame, word of you will get around very quickly and people will take a liking towards you overall. That being said, a few individuals may still be questioning something in this process. What would happen if you were to fail? If you retired the ritual after a previous attempt, failed a step in the execution, or did not get rid of the evidence? What would have happened? The details of failure are blurry, mainly because not many people who failed are alive to tell the tale. However, there have been a few select reports that detail what might just happen. It is said that when someone fails, the consequences are not immediately noticeable. It may start off as a voice or a visual problem, but soon you will start to notice strange changes in your life, changes that will affect your mind. Most reports show once healthy people developing symptoms of schizophrenia and PTSD after failure. But the worst part is not during the waking hours. This was of only one report, but it is said that dreams are something like a trip into hell, and you can feel and hear it all. No further reports are known of those who have failed. All people who have failed were claimed dead no longer than a week after attempting the ritual. Hello there, friends. I just want to take a minute to say thank you so much for taking time out of your day or night to listen to my videos. And I hope that you enjoy the content that I'm putting out. Go ahead and hit the sub button. Tap the bell to make sure you get notified every time I record something new. And be sure to hit the like button and leave a comment down below, letting me know what you would like to hear. Or if you have a story for me, I will leave a link to my email down below. I appreciate your views, and I appreciate each and every one of you. So, with that being said, have a good night or day, and remember, try not to scream.